Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome back to Copper Jacket TV. So starting September 4th, 2022, New York residents are going to have to get a license to purchase a semi-automatic rifle. Now, if that's not unconstitutional and bad enough for you, well, New York doesn't even have a licensing plan in place yet. So with this law starting in just days, there is no way to acquire a license for that semi-automatic rifle. So let's talk about it. Now, real quick before we get started, most of the people that watch these videos are not subscribed. So if you wouldn't mind, just take a quick second, hit that subscribe button. It's free. It helps me out quite a bit. And if you wouldn't mind, check out the main sponsor of this channel, which is the USCCA. They're linked down below. USCCA offers self-defense liability insurance, online education, training. You get a magazine and so much more. So it's definitely worth it. It's probably the best membership you could ever have in your wallet. Okay, so let's go and start off with the obvious. This is unconstitutional. New York has taken the Second Amendment and they have changed it from a right to a privilege that can be granted or revoked by the government. So they already have a licensing scheme for pistols and revolvers. Now they're going to have one for semi-automatic rifles. And so you have to ask the government for permission in order to partake in your Second Amendment rights. That alone is a massive problem. What I try and do is I try and compare these anti-Second Amendment laws that you see across the country to other freedoms that we have, other rights that we have, like the freedom to assemble, freedom of religion, right? So if we were to take this new law that New York is creating and tell somebody that you would need to acquire a permit from the government in order to practice your religion, how well do you think that would fly? If the police were to walk into a church and pick somebody up and put them in handcuffs and walk them out because they went to church without a permit, how well do you think that would fly? It wouldn't hold water. And so if it doesn't hold water for one, it shouldn't for the other. Because just like Justice Thomas said, the Second Amendment is not a second-class right. So let me read you some quick snippets from New York's website here that kind of talks about this topic and what they expect. So it says the question is, and this is number 19. I'll put a link to all of these down below if you want to read them for yourselves. But it says, how do I apply for one of these licenses? Starting September 4th, 2022, you may apply for a semi-automatic rifle license through your county local licensing officer. Now, keep in mind, there is no licensing process available yet, but this is how it reads. Existing firearm license holders can add a semi-automatic rifle to their firearm license through their local licensing officer. Semi-automatic rifle license is required to purchase or take ownership of a semi-automatic rifle on or after September 4th, 2022. Now, it also says in there that if you currently own one, you're not going to have to go and get a license for it. If you owned it prior to September 4th, then they're not going to require you to get a license. But remember, it said purchase or obtain. So basically, if you were to get one from a family member or, somebody was to pass away and leave something to you, you would have to get a license before you could actually take possession of it. In New York, I believe they call their license for pistols and revolvers possession licenses because, again, these don't grant you anything other than the fact that you can possess them. They're not a carry permit or anything like that. It just means that you can have it in your home or in your business. It just means you can possess it. That's it. So we have a possession license now that covers just about everything. Now, it also states, starting September 4th, 2022, if you're under the age of 21, you can no longer even acquire a semi-automatic rifle because you won't be able to obtain a license. In order to obtain a license, you must be at least 21 years of age. So again, you have to be 21 years of age in order to acquire the license, which means if you're below that, and let's say, again, your father or somebody passes away, right, and leaves you something in the will or whatever, you cannot possess that until you turn 21. I don't know what happens while it's in limbo during that time, but that's the way that New York wrote the law. Now, I want to show you guys a quick image. So these are the forms that you would need to fill out in order to get your different licenses. And as you go down the page, you can see all the different forms that are available that you can print out, fill out, and take to your local officer. The one thing that's missing is the one license that starts on September 4th, the semi-automatic rifle license. If we go all the way down to the bottom where it talks about registration and stuff like that, it's not even there. There's not a form that you can fill out for this even up on the website yet. So unless they do it in the next few days, it's not going to be something that's going to be available to you, in which case there's going to be almost like a statewide freeze on I guess, possession or ownership Now, in my own personal opinion, a federal judge needs to put an injunction on this immediately because, in light of Bruin, this is clearly unconstitutional. Bruin states that you have to look at text, history, and tradition when it comes to regulations and gun control, and anytime you would regulate somebody's Second Amendment rights, you have to look at text, history, and tradition. You have to look at the time period between the 1791, when the Second Amendment was ratified, up to about the 1860s. You have to see if there was another law that actually stood up to scrutiny from that time period to use as precedent. And if that doesn't exist, then the current gun control law can't exist as it is today because history and tradition does not back it up. And clearly, there were no licensing schemes back then. You know, we had rights back then before these people came in and decided that they didn't like the Constitution very much. So what we need to do is we need to try and get this stuff to the courts, right? We need to file as many lawsuits as possible. Now, there's a lot more going on across the country that we're going to be talking about. So if you haven't done so already, hit that subscribe button and that little bell notification to let you know when new videos are coming out. I want to thank you all very much for watching, and you guys have a great day.